had no bodies at all. X's and Y's developed from A's and B's. We have to understand we are not physical at all. All these things are developed based on acidity, based on planetary fields, based on moon and sun, and everything else on Earth. I'm not even going to get into that part of genetics.
Okay.
To me, we're outgoing that.
Okay. All right. Now, the next question here is, was there a time when nature fought against, and this is a question based off of the woman lecture. There's a question here in the chat room. Was there a time when nature fought against males coming? And I guess there's a comment you made in the woman lecture, and they're asking, what did you mean by that when you made that statement?
Well, according to metaphysical teachings, and obviously this is strictly metaphysical teachings. Some of the various books I've read, over 800 books, and have in my library thousands. About 2 of them I never read, but I tried to skim through most of them again. There was a time when there were no men on the planet. There was a time when there were no women on the planet. This planet is a developing zoo. This place, everything gets dropped off, including, unfortunately, the laggards. And that comes across with the, well, how do you even begin to tie this in? Supposedly, when the planet was first made, there were no creatures on this planet at all. And there were those who came from the four corners of the cosmos to come together, bringing 90 degrees of understanding to create 360 degrees to teach these souls how to make a planet. These souls had no body. They were simply lights and energy. But they came together and understood universal mind and began to form a planet. It is said that our planet produced a sun, and they were supposed to do this and get away before, because they came for worlds without light, worlds without sun. They made their own light. You know, people say, look for the light at the end of the tunnel. I say, if you go into the tunnel, bring your light. Well, these were light bringers, and they were to make a planet. But before they could get away from making a planet, this solar system produced a sun. This is why it's solar. And the sun, they knew, meant death for them, because there are worlds without suns. And those who live for a long time and those who can bring their own light go to planets. That's why they tell you it's nothing new under the sun. So when you get that, then there's a whole story of what happened when they abandoned some of them, called the abandoned ones, or the abandoneros, which lived inside the earth, and then how they began to progenitate, and that they were sent, almost in the story of Superman, from the far reaches of space. They were sent a zygote. They were sent a creature with a vial of melanin, and this was the secret there. And this was the first black person on Earth. And then this person was also androgynous. It had no particular sex thing, but was to rule the inner Earth, and the extra Earth. And since Earth is called terrestrial, it meant interterrestrial, terrestrial, and extraterrestrial. We now don't even understand that. There's much difference between that and an alien is mind and body. So I simply state, from that, then we begin to develop species, and it's said that from the Merkaba came a group of women. The women were coming here because they needed to have a more female species in order to carry out the will of the gods, who wanted to mine for gold, found out that the creatures that were beginning to bear here were not strong enough, and they needed one to be able to carry a seed. So they brought from another planet the female species, brought from another planet the male species, crossed them over to dig for gold, and have been digging ever since. Then you've had drop-offs here. You've had everything else here. This planet is at least 4 or 5 billion years old. We've had everything here. We're still getting cross species and genetic modifications, and we're getting hybrids everywhere, and it's never stopped.
Okay, so let me back up for a moment. You said the ancients were from another planet or from another star system, so to speak. Could you kind of sort of dig into that a little bit deeper in terms of that?
Not really. Without going to a lot of other explanations, there had no bodies. Bodies are things you need on a planet that has gravity and a planet under a sun. There are planets, they're now discovering what? Dark worlds,
like
black matter. Pardon?
It's like a car.
Like a car. Well, they're now discovering, what do you want to call it? They got dark matter. They got black holes. They're finding that light comes from dark matter. These were people who these were intelligences. That's a better word. Intelligences that didn't have a body. They were free to roam the universe. They're used by way of the Merkaba, which is the Mer, means the vehicle or wave. Kanba is the spirit and soul. They were traveling in Merkabas. They came to find out how it was to begin to create. And to create, of course, had nothing to do with the sperm and egg at that time. It meant create by mind. And so they were using their minds to find out how the universal creator had created them. It's then when you get under a sun that things get rough, because that's why they tell you it's nothing new under the sun. It's only repetition under the sun. You can only go so far under the sun. Then when you incubate past that, you can go to darker worlds and form your own suns. So this is how it all started out in that basis, and that is a study within itself, and not necessarily believable. I believe it, but doesn't mean that everybody else has to at all.
Okay, so where did these women come from who were initially brought here?
Where did this female species come from?
Right,
better than that? Some of them took the eggs from women who were in other solar systems. I mean, it's a big deal about that. Some say that they came from what's this name of this? It starts with a P. I can't think of it right now again.
Pleiades?
No, not the Pleiades.
Okay.
It's a different one. Anyway, it'll come back if I release it. And then some say that the men were brought from another planet. That they came as red-haired, whatever you want to call it again. So it's a lot of things have been dropped off here. But the first supposedly created androgen person was called Seth. And that's the one that they sent here with the vial of melanin, which was supposed to be introduced into the incubus stage. And this is where this was the first black man, which it wasn't black man, it wasn't black woman. It was an androgen creature who was turned dark so that he or she could live inside the earth, on the earth, and outside the earth, and also was be able to liberate the soul, which is called astral projection. So the first creature here was neither. Later on, to reproduce as the so-called gods, or elves, if they want to call them, or what they really call Zamzuman and Anunnaki and so on and so forth, they wanted then to develop their own species to mine gold for their planet and to reproduce here. So you might as well say they put a prototype here that was originally in its own stead. They bought whatever they wanted to, made whatever they wanted to, and still think it's possible, because that's why they're still abducting people and still giving people shots and everything else. They never stop.
So what happened if when we initially came here, the first beings that were here, if they did not have a body, what happened to slow the vibration down to manifest a body?
The sun. That's why on the sun you have to have a body. The sun will make you produce. This is why they always made that statement. There's nothing new under the sun. This is what the ancients were afraid of. They would not be able to send their minds into rocks and trees and water and everything else. They now would have to become physical and have to produce a body because of the sunlight. And this was a horrible thing that they were afraid of, because they wanted to be free to roam. They didn't want a body. They wanted to project their bodies and their consciousness into anything, anywhere, and become that. That's what they talk about: spirit in the wood, spirit in the stone, spirit in the water. Water still contains spirits. So does wood, so do trees, because the spirit of consciousness is the universal prime creators. It's when you get physical with those kind of things that you now have to be solid. You now have to have a gravitational field. You now have to have an endo and exoskeleton. You now are earth-bound. You now are bound to a planet under a sun. And actually it was called terrestrials. That's why we are terrestrial.
Okay, now, in listening to some of the information you're giving us, the thing that sticks out to me the most is this gold. Gold was very important, and obviously is still important. What is the importance of the gold? Why were these other beings coming to this planet to mine gold?
Because gold helps to raise your vibrations up to almost like pure sun. That's why they say the gold of the sun and so on like this again. Gold enables you to vibrate very high, to hold, even though it is a substance, but to hold in higher vibrations. When you have gold in your blood now, most bacteria can't live in you. In fact, we'll be selling it much longer, though. That's another thing. But we presently sell monatomic gold. Mono means one. Most, whether they're into pharmacology or whether into nutraceuticals or whatever, again, they most agree that the lower the thing, the more absorbable. This is why they say liquids or colloids. But lower than colloid or colloidal is ionic. And lower than ionic, or I shouldn't even say lower, smaller than ionic, is monatomic. It means it's just one little molecule that stops it from non-existing. So when you get gold in that kind of resonance, it helps to raise the blood system, the blood energy, to 121 megahertz. I didn't say blood pressure. The blood energy to 121 megahertz. Most bacteria can get over 100. So if you could stay there, not only could you your immune system be almost impenetrable, but you'd be able to astral project because your blood would be so very high in vibration. Your whole DNA and RNA, your ribonucleic acid and dinucleic acid, would be promulgating at such a high rate that you could produce babies and children, if you wanted to, that were very high in development. Gold is your answer to high frequency. Anything less in the table of elements becomes low frequency. And so what you want is the highest frequency you can on the smallest thing that you can. That's why they're now finding out that the minerals now are really all we need. And in fact, there's another thing too. We are now, as well, I'm all over the place on this one. We now have something called Q-hydrate 528. I think one of the first people to actually have that around. And that will produce 86 different minerals, all monatomic. The only one that doesn't have in is gold, and of course we're specialists in gold, so you can even add that to it. You find that will take away a lot of female problems also, too, so you have, I don't say a largely female audience, but people who are going through an estrogen problem, and they're beginning to get into, what do you want to call it, the menses or like this. Right. Start taking that in and watch how fast that goes away. That's something new. Most people don't even know about it, but the thing is, again, that when you have gold, you're vibrating very high. When you have minerals that vibrate very high, that means your whole system now is really getting food. What we eat as food is simply just fiber and genetically multiplied stuff, and if we put it on a diode, at least it won't kill us, but we're not getting any substance. When you get minerals,
what you really need.
Okay. Yeah, but when you get minerals, now you can really get food. That way you don't get hungry. Your cells begin to stay stable, and they don't become cancerous and all because they're now getting what they need, the energy. Minerals produce electrons. Electrons produce energy as they go through the body.
All right. Okay. Now, what is your view on the significance of Lilith and Hecate and how they connect to the underworld or the hollow earth or the inner world? Could you enlighten us on that?
Now you're talking about Hecate and Lilith. Now you're talking about a branch of Judaism. You're talking about a branch now of religious concepts and belief. I would say I don't say any of those had to be. I give you the story that there were produced inside by what they call the Dracon takeovers, certain cross species of people, and some of which were in female consciousness, and that they are the ones that then supposedly still lived or did live within the inner world, never touching the surface, but living deep within the bowels of earth on what they call the seven thrones of gold. They supposedly lived in 7 cities, but beneath that, this gets so deep. It just gets into supposedly some females or those that had more femininity than they did masculinity that lived inside the earth, that were able to travel also supposedly out of the earth and were in female positions. So, of course, they refer to them with names, and there are many stories about it. Some say that they were fableized, that they never existed. Others say that they did. But I believe that they did, and I think Hecate and Lilith are, again, of what they call the altered Eve. They are the ones that had hybrids, that some of them had reptile genes within them. Some of them were the gods to the reptilians. Which, of course, the highest sort is the flying albino reptile, which is also androgynous. So, as I say, it gets into very deep waters. That would take a whole show within itself.
All right. The next question is the pineal gland, and this is a question from the chat room, is the pineal gland different in men and women? And is melanin, and I guess this is my question in addition to that, is melanin inside the body any different between the sexes?
It depends on the point of conception. The pineal gland, when it's functioning correctly, produces melanin. There are at least 8 grades of melanin. And the darker you are, the deeper and denser the form of melanin, which means that you can then take in more sunlight, or what they call ultraviolet light, which can alter things. You can even be exposed to the infrared spectrum, which is very bad, and still not mutate again, possibly. Once you get calcification of the pineal gland, you get a destruction of melanin, and with enough you can get vitiligo if you destroy it enough. What is so beautiful about the pineal gland, it's up in the hypothalamus along with the pituitary gland. we're mistaught as far as by allopathic medicine, and so as far as I'm concerned, by believing that the pituitary gland is a master gland. And I always raise, if the pituitary gland is a master gland, why is it when the pineal gland calcifies, the pituitary gland goes crazy and you get cancers and everything else again? It is the pineal gland, which is, and especially that produces melanin, and the denser your melanin, the more psychic you are. When that happens, it gives orders to the pituitary gland to secrete and produce the hormones, which through, of course, the organs and glands then secrete, and this is why things stay in balance. But you let the pineal gland get out of whack, everything goes out of whack. Yes, it is different in men and women, only to the degree that the progenitors of the child now in the uterus is the female, and because of that, the female has 3 lobes to the thyroid gland, which they don't tell her. This is why the need for iodine is there. Also has some other glands that they don't tell you about, too. And the vestigial portions of that require melanin to produce, and that is what is called, and we start a whole new ballgame now, the opophoron and the paraophoron, and most people don't even realize what that means.